welcome. I'm really glad that you're here. Now, I'll just ask, this usually takes me about an hour to get through. It's a little bit information dense. So if you'll bear with me, just jot down the questions that you have as you go along. Many of you are highly motivated. I can see it in your eyes. You're even holding your pen in your hand right now. I can see how highly motivated you are. Just put pen to paper, jot down your questions, save them till the end, and we'll go into in as much detail as I'm able to go. I'll just let you know there are no stupid questions with one exception. The only stupid question is the one to which I don't know the answer. But everything else is fair game. So let's get started. What I want this presentation to do, now you guys are like my advanced placement seminar, you're like my senior seminar version of this program. I want you to provide you with information that you need to protect yourself from becoming a victim of fraud and scams, but I also want you to be my ambassadors. I want you to take this knowledge out into the community, take it with you when you leave, and you can kind of build upon what we've learned this evening for your friends and your family and your civic groups, okay? And by all means, if your civic groups or your churches or your HOAs or your neighborhood associations want me or Roy or Detective Monticelli to come in and speak with you, that's a big part of our jobs. I would rather do prevention than work cases that I probably can't solve because the suspects are in Nigeria or India or China. Okay, and we'll talk about that more. So that's my goal for this next hour that we're going to spend together. Okay, just to keep you motivated, I will warn you, there is a quiz at the end. Don't worry, very few people fail it, but if you do, you have to wash the cars in the fleet. That's a cost savings measure. We've been very successful at reducing our county contract with carpool from that, so it's fine. This used to be at the end. I've moved this slide up to the front, so those of you who benefit from seeing something more than once, if you're a visual learner, or hearing it more than once, if you're an auditory learner, you'll get it twice. So these are our red flag warnings. I'll just call this the bottom line up front. And I want to familiarize you with these concepts. I used to just have it at the end of the presentation. I do tend to run at the mouth, and I didn't always get there. And I'm like, well, maybe I should move it to the front. So here are the things that I want to jump out at you that scream fraud. If you encounter these in your personal life, or a friend or a loved one hears them over the phone, or sees them in an email advertisement or something like that, I want you to run screaming the other way, going, this is definitely a scam. And those things are as follows. If somebody says, hey, pay me with gift cards, I want you to go down to the 7-Eleven or the Kroger or the Target, and I want you to buy me some gift cards, and I want you to read me the number on the back of the card. Does that seem like a reasonable thing to do or an unreasonable thing to do? Seems unreasonable. That's because it is. So don't do it. What if I were to tell you, hey, I want you to go withdraw $20,000 in cash from your bank account. I want you to roll it up in magazines. I want you to duct tape those magazines closed, put it in a shoebox, and then mail that shoebox to this address. Also unreasonable, would you agree? Please don't do that. It's happened before. Please don't do it, just don't. If I told you to buy gold and do the same process, don't buy gold and do the same process. Okay, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Are there any Bitcoin millionaires in the audience this evening? Anybody who's like a hobbyist investor in this stuff? Good, then I won't insult you by saying that like 99 times out of 100 it's just a scam. Okay, so don't touch it. If you've made it this far in life without buying a bunch of cryptocurrencies, probably you don't need to dip your toe in the water today. Probably you're good to go. All right, if you have a loved one who's been unexpectedly kidnapped for ransom, that's a bit of an odd thing. That's a bit of a red flag. If they've been on vacation and they've gotten arrested or something, you're like, well, I didn't even know he was in Azerbaijan. Well, that's probably because he's not, so that's a red flag, right? Okay, if anybody asks for remote access to your computer or to your smartphone, that's a big red flag. Unless you know the person and unless they are providing legitimate tech support services to you and you are paying them for that service. You know what I mean? Like if they work for your company or they work for you and you've hired them to repair your computer, don't ever do it. So it's analogous to saying you've got the nicest deadbolts in the world on your front door, and then somebody knocks on the door and asks to come in, and you unlock the door and you invite them into your home. That's kind of the analogy I want you to think of. Once you click yes on that AnyDesk or remote desktop, those services, the software, the malactor has arbitrary access to your computer. They can run whatever administrator code they want to, and you really have very limited options to kick them out once that's happened. Okay, threats from law enforcement or the IRS. Police officers, sheriff's deputies are not going to call you and harangue you over the phone for money. If they do, please call us so that we can fire them because they're obviously corrupt, right? No law enforcement officer is going to shake you down for money over the phone. It's just not going to happen. This sense of urgency undergirds everything else we're going to talk about, okay? Everything we're going to talk about for the next hour is going to have this theme, act now or else. Either you're going to miss out on this golden opportunity or something bad's going to happen to you, okay? That sense of urgency is how they're going to try to short-circuit your rational thinking. Online-only romance is a big one. If you've never spoken to this person face-to-face, are they really your soulmate? Probably not. Probably not. Too good to be true investment opportunities and insider threats. Somebody calls you and says, they're hacking your bank account. We got to act now to preserve your funds, right? Yeah, who's the hacker? The person you're talking to on the other end of the phone. What are they hacking? You. They're trying to bamboozle you into taking actions against your best interest. So just keep those in mind as we go through, because we're going to hit all these as we talk. Okay. So who are we? Just kind of for your awareness. Well, there are 7 of us in our unit. There could be 17. We would still be pretty busy. We've got a couple of sergeants, a lieutenant, and a captain in the criminal investigations section. We work closely with computer forensics detectives, and in the event that we recover some funds, we can try to forfeit those back to the victims or to the Commonwealth if they're the proceeds of a crime. So we work with our civilian asset forfeiture coordinator for that. One of the interesting things about white-collar crime is it's kind of the only, maybe not the only, but it's one of just a handful of disciplines in law enforcement where we assume that our suspect is based outside the United States until proven otherwise. And you can imagine how complicated that makes our investigations. Imagine if every murder were like a cartel hit that crossed national borders, and what a thorny issue that would be to investigate those crimes. Well, many of these flim-flams and swindles are exactly that. They're transnational, organized crime. So your friendly neighborhood fraud investigator is up against the triads or the Russian mob on a lot of these cases, and it's a real heavy lift for some of our investigations. So to that effect, we work as closely as we can with our federal partners and with our private sector partners to try to build the relationships that we need to maintain an idea of what's trending so that when we see something new, it doesn't blindside us. Detective Preston works quite a bit with our Suspicious Activity Reporting Review Committee, and that's a service of the United States Secret Service. We sit down once a month and go over what are some new suspicious activity reports. So those of you who are familiar with the phrase, you might have heard it in the news, that's a provision of the Bank Secrecy Act, the 1970 Anti-Money Laundering Act of Congress. So if a bank employee sees unusual or suspicious activity, they can just write a letter to the file. And that gets filed away at FinCEN's office in the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network in Vienna, Virginia, where it just kind of is like a letter to the file. It goes into the electronic filing cabinet and just sits there forever. And then periodically we review them to see, are there any that are unusually large transactions or indicative of transnational money laundering or something along those lines. But for the most part, most of them are just letters to the file. So I think I mentioned that we talked about suspicious activity reports. So we also have partnerships with some of our local and regional banking institutions. You may know that Capital One has its world headquarters here in the Richmond metro region, specifically in Henrico County. They have a very sophisticated anti-money laundering program, so sometimes they'll kick information our way. But whenever we have information crossing state lines or patterns of behavior in a financial system, we rely on the banks to kind of alert us that something may be afoot, because otherwise we're never going to know about it. So what do we see? What are some of these common scams and swindles that affect our citizens in Henrico County? They fall into a bunch of different categories. Construction fraud is evergreen. As long as there's somebody looking to build a house or put on a new roof or pave a driveway, somebody's going to be taking advantage of their willingness to write a check. Imposter scams are sort of an umbrella term for a bunch of different MOs where somebody is just pretending to be someone they're not. Usually that's going to be a government official or it's going to be an employee for a company you might have heard of. Distress scams we'll talk about, that's that grandma scam. Romance scams are a big deal. I'll hit that pretty heavily at the end, and then I've got a slide on investment scams because there's huge losses for that. Some folks are really into the technological stuff, the James Bond side of things, so we've got some slides on here on ATM skimmers in case you're curious. So who are my homeowners in the room? Got a few. Apartment renters? Got a few of those as well. Okay. So for our apartment folks, you know, if you want to put your head down on the table and take a nap, that's fine. I'm not going to hold it against you. We've got a few slides here for those of us who are in a private home. All right, so construction fraudsters love to pick on senior citizens in particular. Why do you think that might be?
Oh, because they can't go to the roof and stuff, right?
Sure, there's an inability to DIY, right? Even some folks who might be excellent DIYers, as we age, our bodies are not maybe up to the task of sweeping our own chimneys as much as they once were. So that's absolutely a good answer. Yeah, folks are not able to do the work themselves anymore. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Goodshaw.
They
Godshaw.
often are single. There's not somebody else in the house.
Ah, that's an excellent answer, and that's going to really drive to a very important point, which is the number one risk factor among all the demographic issues. The number one risk factor for falling victim to a scam is living alone without a partner. That's by far and away the number one risk factor. What else?
You might think that they have like saved money.
100%, 100%. Who's more likely to have access to savings? Somebody who's 19 or 90? I mean, let's just do the math here, right? It's not that hard to figure out. Also, they're more often to be physically present in their home, and they're more likely to own their own home. The number one demographic for home ownership in the United States is, of course, people 50 and older, right? Makes sense. So that's why they love to go picking on our older folks. What do we see? We see paving scams, roofing scams, tree work. Anytime a big storm comes to town, there's always going to be these shady tree work crews. Sometimes it's just general contractors overbilling, but usually we see people pretending to be general contractors, or people who used to be general contractors, got in a little trouble and lost their license. And now they're just basically scamming in the industry with which they're familiar. This was a particularly interesting case. This was a paving scam that was sort of like half flim-flam, half mafia protection racket, sort of extortion scheme. So this crew came to town, and it's a door-to-door sales pitch. And so the paving scam was something along the lines of, you don't have a name tag. How am I supposed to pick on you? You're not going to get away with that for long. I will pick on you. I'll just make up a name for you. Mr. Owens, well, you know, knock, knock, knock. Hey, Mr. Owens, you know, I'm Jim Bob McGillicuddy. I run Jim Bob's Paving. Your neighbor down the street, Frank, you know Frank, right? He's lived here for 30 years. Your neighbor down the street, Frank, just had his driveway paved, but wouldn't you know it, we overbought material. So we got a little extra material we didn't need for Frank's job. So for today and today only, Mr. Owens, we'll charge you just the cost of labor. We won't charge you a thing to pave your driveway. What do you think? What do you think on materials? Well, sold, right? Never pass up that bargain. So if you take the bait, what these guys would do is they would back their dump truck of like tar, basically tar and gravel, and they dumped it right at the fringe of the person's driveway where the driveway met the street and blocked ingress and egress to the person's home, blocking their cars in. And then they came back and say, hey, Mr. Owens, wouldn't you know what, the price just went up. So it's like that nice driveway you got there, be a shame if something were to happen to it, like that mafia protection racket kind of thing. So it's a really interesting case. That crew was itinerant. They were traveling up 95, so we haven't seen them in years. They might have, maybe they got incarcerated for all I know, but we haven't seen them in a long time. But that was a pretty interesting one. We see all manner of shoddy work that didn't need to be performed, or work that was performed to an incredibly substandard level. So what are some rules to live by with these construction fraud instances? The first and foremost one is don't deal with unsolicited door-to-door sales pitches. So, you know, a lot of folks are very friendly, and I get that, and they don't want to be rude or dismissive if somebody knocks on their door, but you're under no obligation to be nice to everyone in the world, right? So it's okay to not answer the door when someone knocks. It really is. My wife put a video doorbell on our front door, and she still answers the door. And I'm like, why? Why do we have this nice video doorbell? You can have a conference call with them without ever unlocking the door. You don't need to. But anyway, it's just, you know, she's just so nice. She's so nice. So don't be so friendly that you let somebody start that pressure tactic hard sale on you, because sometimes they work. Any vehicles that are used by legitimate contractors will have clearly affixed signage with like their Department of Transportation number and things like that on them. So if you just see a white panel van, it's pretty shady. Don't pay in cash. Do not pay in cash. We see this come up from time to time. Folks will say, well, you know, I paid for my roof or my new windows or what have you, and I paid $20,000 up front. And I'm like, well, that's sad and unfortunate. I'm sorry that happened to you, but can I even prove that what they're saying to me is true? Really, I can't unless they had receipts signed by both parties. I can't even prove that they paid them the amount that they're telling me they paid them on the day that they told me they paid me. So it leaves us in a bind. Anyone who's contracting for work, what's right there in the word contractor? Con. Somebody always says it. I love it. Thank you, Mr. Madhu. Yes, con, but no, in this case, it's not what I'm going for. I'm going for contract, of course. So try to get something in writing. It doesn't have to be lawyered up. It can be written in crayon on a cocktail napkin, as long as there are clear expectations for who's going to be doing what work and when, and what the payment is going to be, payment schedule. But yes, con is a good answer. What's con, of course, short for? Con man. You know, con man. What is it short for? Confidence. Gold star, teacher's pet. I'm doing it to all of you right now, aren't I? Good looks and charm will get you pretty far. All right. So expect to pay in installments for any work that's being contracted. Now, have you ever seen the payment schedule for like the in-house financing companies that do a lot of, they nickel and dime those contractors like extreme detail, don't they? There'll be like 20 different payments. Yeah, so okay, here are the milestones for the project. Milestone A, B, C, and D, you get X amount of money for each milestone. You don't have to go into that much granularity unless you're the bank, but at least expect to pay in 3 installments. 4 or 5 is even better, but 3 is the minimum I would even consider. So that could be, you know, a third up front to buy materials, a third halfway through the project, and the final third when it's all cleaned up and done to your satisfaction. You can also consult the Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation. That's dpor.virginia.gov. They're the licensing body for the lion's share of professional folks in the Commonwealth. That's everybody from barbers, estheticians, roofers, HVAC technicians, asbestos remediators, you name it. All of those folks are licensed by and through DPOR. Now, if you're dealing with a healthcare professional, they're licensed through the Virginia Department of Health Professions. So if you're going to hire a home healthcare aide and you want to make sure that their certification is current, then you would check it through the Virginia Department of Health Professions. If you're going to hire somebody in a kind of like law enforcement related career like locksmiths or private security, we are licensed, we in law enforcement and folks in those professions are licensed by the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. So those are the 3 main licensing agencies in the Commonwealth. So let's take a look at DPOR's website. This is what it's going to look like. It may have been updated in the last few days, but it's going to be very, very, very similar to this. It's going to have a license lookup feature right prominently displayed on the page. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to check for Monticelli's Rip You Off Cheap Remodeling LLC. We'll just see. We'll just see if it's out there. And wouldn't you know it, no results. However, if we were to try for Chris Smith, do you anticipate getting some results? Of course. So we see lots of folks with the last name Smith who are licensed to conduct business in the Commonwealth. No surprise. Now, this is all public record, so we're not violating, you know, Mr. Smith's rights by showing this to you. And you see everybody from realtors to asbestos remediators. I'll bring your attention to a disciplinary action search button that you can click on. That's pretty important. If you want to get into a professional relationship with somebody, you can check to see whether there have been any complaints against their professional license. So here we're going to use an example from one of Detective Monticelli's previous cases, and that's Butterfield Homes Incorporated. What do you know about the status of their license? It is revoked. In fact, it was revoked. So they did something that ran afoul of the board's attention, and they had their license revoked. So we can go to a complaint tab here on the website, and we can actually view a transcript of the administrative proceeding against that person's license. It's like a mini trial. So the headquarters for DPOR is right here in Henrico County on Mayland Drive. They will have an administrative hearing. The contractor or whomever's licensed can bring in an attorney to represent them. It's very much like a court proceeding, just a little bit less formal, and the rules of evidence are a little bit more relaxed, but everything is pretty much like the same level of seriousness that you would get in front of a judge. And so they will go through what the nature of the complaint is, what is alleged to have happened, and what are the facts. And this is an example. Here's what it would look like from Butterfield Homes. Now, that's also true of the Virginia Department of Health Professions, so any complaints against a nurse or a physician, you'd get the same sort of information. The last thing I'll bring to your attention is the Virginia State Corporation Commission's website. And this one is interesting because it's sort of like, it's not dispositive. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If I am an enterprising criminal, what might I want to register with the state to hold up in front of me like a shield so that I can appear to be legitimate while I'm doing my criminal misdeeds behind it? What can you think that I might want to use? A business license maybe, or a business certification. Well, let's get away from the licensing, maybe just an LLC, right? Maybe just an LLC. What do we call that in the white-collar world? Well, that's what it stands for, 100%. Yeah, that's what it stands for, limited liability corporation. That's 100% correct. But we have a special phrase for it in white-collar investigations. You will have heard it when I say it. Business front. Everybody's heard that phrase, right? A business front. So if I'm an enterprising criminal, I want to create this LLC that I can hide behind like a shield, and on paper, I'm a legitimate businessman. But of course, everything I'm doing is underhanded. Make sense? So when you search for the business entity, let's say, Joe Wood's Friendly Roofing, Inc., right? Call Joe Wood, he'll put a roof on your house, rock bottom prices, and super good looking, right? Obviously. So when you search for Joe Wood's Friendly Roofing, Inc., if you get a positive result, if there is that business entity on file, you don't necessarily know whether it's legitimate or not. Does that make sense? However, the opposite is not true. If you were to search for Joe Wood's Friendly Roofing, Inc., and there's no result at all, what do we know? They're not legit. And not only are they not legit, not only are they a crook, they're a lazy crook. Because they couldn't even be bothered to write a check for $100 to the State Corporation Commission to register a business front. You with me? Okay. So there's a couple of resources that you can use to help determine what you might be dealing with. So let's talk about scams. This stuff is old wine in new bottles. These are tried and true for the most part. The Nigerian prince scam, which you may have heard of, may understand how that works, derives from a scheme called the Spanish prisoner. That scam dates back to the late 1800s. So we're talking like gold doubloons and the Pony Express, right? Sure thing, yeah. Adjust it. I can see that it's coming in at a pretty nasty angle. So this stuff is old, old, old. And I tell folks that really, from the time of the first caveman getting swindled out of his dinner by the first cave con artist, nothing's really changed in human nature, right? We're all the same people that we've always been, and people are people wherever you go. What's the percentage of our DNA that we share in common, right? Anybody in this room? 99.999, right? We're all the same. And so these scams work by exploiting the vulnerabilities in our shared humanity. Okay, and we're going to talk about how that works. Emotion, not reason, is the primary lever that the scammers are going to pull to separate their victims from their money. Has anybody ever reasoned themselves into a scam, do you think? Think about it. Has anybody ever reasoned themselves into a scam? You sit down at the dinner table with your loved one, with your husband or your wife, your grandchildren, you say, honey, I've really been thinking long and hard about this. I think this Ponzi scheme is a great investment opportunity. Is that how it happens? No, of course not. Fraud is not a rational process. Fraud is an emotional process. And that's how they're going to hijack your higher order thinking to get you feeling fearful, or get you feeling greedy, or get you feeling lonely. You with me? And once you start feeling those big feelings, those sort of like midbrain emotional responses, it gets really difficult to think clearly, doesn't it? Just for a little thought experiment, I'm not going to make anybody raise your hands. Maybe think of a time in your life when you've been under the influence of a chemical intoxicant of some kind. All right? No hands need to go up for this. Could be one too many glasses of wine with dinner, right? Whatever it is. I want you to compare and contrast that experience with a time when you were under an extreme emotional influence. Now tell me, what's the difference? Is there one? I would articulate it's very difficult to think clearly under either experience, right? So a lot of our victims think of them as under the influence, not of a drug, but under severe emotional distress. And that'll help kind of humanize and empathize and help us avoid victim blaming as we're talking about this. Because some of this stuff, you're going to read it and you're going to go, there's no way anybody would fall for this. And I want you to kind of extend that little bit of empathy to the victims because, you know, they got caught on a bad day typically. Okay, so what are some other factors? Obedience to authority is a huge one. A lot of these scams are imposter schemes. They're going to pretend to be someone in a position of authority, and they're going to give the victim instructions. Here's what you need to do. You need to go to the bank right now and make this withdrawal. Well, we're human, and humans are typically pretty obedient to authority, and so a lot of people will do it without asking too many questions. The Milgram experiment is kind of the marquee for that. For everybody familiar with the Milgram experiment? That's your homework for the evening. Is go look that up, and you know, prepare yourself to be disappointed in your shared humanity. Okay, and then I mean, seriously, it'll change your perspective. Okay, and then the last one is like it would never get past the Institutional Review Board. This was back in the 60s. It would never pass the IRB these days, but had really very interesting outcome. And then I mentioned earlier that the #1 risk factor for falling victim to a scam is living by yourself, not having that immediate support network, not having someone to talk to, and then oftentimes feeling those feelings of loneliness and isolation. It's very risky. However, knowledge of scams is highly protective at keeping people from falling victim. And I'm deriving these statements from Ms. DeLima and her co-workers from her article, Does One Size Fit All? But there's any number of Bureau of Justice Assistance research projects that the Department of Justice has hired social scientists to kind of dig into this and try to find out what makes people fall for scams, who's the most likely victim, that sort of thing. So there's any number of social science research. If you all geek out on this as much as I do, you can read those at your leisure. Okay, so what do we see? IRS scams, jury duty scams, lottery scams. Some of these are going to be familiar to you. Distress scams, reshipper or fake employment opportunities, relationship scams, computer trespass, cryptocurrency investment, all of these kind of buckets, all these categories of scams. Many of them will be familiar to you, but maybe not all of them. So let's go into some detail. An IRS scam is going to start with a very scripted. I want you to think that these are literally scripted conversations. There's a member of a criminal enterprise sitting in a call center. They've got a computer screen up, and they are literally reading what to say from a script on the screen. That's how these scams work. Okay?
What is IRS?
The Internal Revenue Service is the main tax collecting body for the United States government. So if you've ever paid taxes in the United States, at some point, the IRS was involved. You with me?
Yeah. Is there any reason many Indian scammers involved here?
Oh, okay. So what makes the Indians like the IRS scam? I don't know. So I'm serious. I don't know. The scammers develop experience and expertise the same way that regular people do, though, don't they? So if I were to ask you, what's the largest geographic association with automotive manufacturing in the United States? You would say that's most associated with what region? Yeah, Great Lakes area, right? Okay, how about software development? West Coast, right? Menlo, California, right? Modesto. Okay, what if I were to say film industry? Hollywood and Atlanta, Georgia. You with me? What if I were to say banking and finance? Of course, right? Charlotte, Richmond, New York. Okay, so scammers develop expertise. Sure, Capital One has its world headquarters in Henrico County. I already told you, pay attention. You get a demerit. Miss Pace, you get a demerit in my class for failure to pay attention to every nonsense word that comes out of your instructor's mouth. How dare you? How dare, okay, all right, do better, do better. All right, I'm teasing you, of course. No hard feelings. But yes, Capital One is world headquartered. Capital One is world headquartered in Henrico County. Okay, so scammers build expertise the same way that honest people do. You know, Jimmy figures out a way to con grandma. Well, Jenny tells his brother, you know, who tells his cousin, who tells his next door neighbor, and the next thing you know, you have a syndicate brewing. And then over time, this geographic area becomes associated with this type of crime. And it happens all over the world all the time. So for whatever reason, and I couldn't tell you like why, IRS scams come out of India. That's just where they come from. All right. So they're going to have the script. They're going to say you owe some unconscionable amount of money to the IRS, right? We've got a SWAT team parked around the corner. They've already got the battering ram on. Your door's coming down, and the wall's coming with it, baby. Boom, right? We're going to go in. You're going to get spear tackled, triple tased, zip tied, and dragged out in your underwear. We're going to perp walk you and put you on the 6 o'clock news, okay? Or we're not unreasonable. We'll give you one last chance to make things right. Pay your fine right now. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, a lot of people, they hear all of that scare tactics, and they get so emotionally involved in the fear of negative consequences that they lose the ability to think clearly, temporarily, and they go along with it, okay? So what they're going to say is, go on down to the Kroger and buy me some gift cards and read the number on the back of the card, because that's how Uncle Sam wants to get paid today. Miss, is it Ligers? Mm-hmm. Miss Ligers, how? See, I have hidden depth. See, it's like an onion. You peel one layer, and sure enough, there's another one right there beneath. So let me ask you, how long have you, in your professional life, been paying taxes to the IRS?
A long time.
A long time. Have you ever paid in gift cards?
Never.
Uncle Sam's never wanted to get paid in gift cards? No. Well, okay, so that might be a clue that this is out of the ordinary. Would you agree? And so you're gonna push back, and you're gonna say, nope, I'm not doing that. That's hanky. And they'll say, no problem. Go on down to the 7-Eleven, to the Bitcoin ATM, and put 25,000 American dollars through the little slot in the front of the machine. What do you think? Uncle Sam want to get paid in Bitcoin? No, of course not. But it's difficult to think clearly when you're in the moment. It's difficult when you're feeling those big feelings and that lots of fear and holy smokes, I didn't pay my taxes, I'm going to jail. What if you really are delinquent on your taxes? Right. How many people really are delinquent on their taxes? Well, a non-zero number. And so, you know, that panic attack's going to hit you, and it's hard to think clearly, okay? They're often nasty on the phone, but needless to say, the IRS is not going to call you and start shaking you down. It just doesn't work like that. They're not going to call you at all. Now, I used to make big statements. You know, Joe Wood up here running his mouth. I used to say, the IRS will never call you ever for any reason, period, ever. And then, of course, in one presentation, I had the lady who'd like retired with 50 years on the job at the IRS. And she's like, well, actually, if we think you're the victim of identity theft, we'll call you and reach out to you. I'm like, okay, fine. So now I have to say the IRS will never call with those instructions. Okay, I have to qualify my statement there, get myself out of a jam. Okay, jury duty. This one is interesting. The jury duty scheme is right here in the United States. Yeah, Team USA, right? We're not going to let the Nigerians beat us at the scam game, are we? No way, USA, right? So, all right, where does the jury duty scam come from? Any guesses? Throw something out there. It's okay. Put yourself on the spot.
Maybe somebody didn't really attend and they got.
Yeah, okay, so that's the genesis of it, right? If you blow off jury duty, can you really get in trouble? Sure, that's a real thing, right? You got to come to court. Whether you're a witness or a suspect or a victim or just a juror, you got to come to court when the judge tells you got to come to court, right? That's kind of the foundation of the entire legal system. It's not optional whether you go to court that day. Okay, so I take your meaning. These are coming from the penal system. Yes, I regret to inform you that being incarcerated doesn't necessarily mean you can't continue to commit crime. Sorry to burst your bubble. So these came out of the Autry State Prison in Georgia in around 2014. So for a while it was called the Autry State Prison Scam, But of course, once somebody invents a new scam, they got to tell their brother and their cousin and their nephew and their grandma and their pets and all this, and the word gets out. So now it's everywhere, and we just call it the jury duty scam because it's not localized to one prison anymore. So the way this works, it's not located in one prison anymore. It's all over. So the way this works is the criminals will smuggle in some contraband cell phones. Oftentimes, they will bribe the guards. I regret to inform you there is some corruption in the penal system. Sorry to shatter your innocence. And then they're off to the races, right? They got nothing but time on their hands. They're doing 20 to life. What do you got to do all day? Well, you're going to noodle around on the internet and you're going to conduct open source investigations, the same way that a police officer or a reporter or anybody else would. So you're going to look up, what are the highest income zip codes in Virginia? Well, a couple of them are right here in the Richmond metropolitan area, aren't they? So you're going to look up, okay, what's the area code, telephone area code associated with those zip codes? Okay, 804 it is. And then you're going to start data mining. Who are the elected officials? Who are the judges? Who's the sheriff? Who's the chief of police? Who's the county manager? And they're just going to take notes, copious notes on who all these people are. And that way, when they call random numbers that start, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to this, it's all random. When they dial random numbers, they're going to name drop on the phone. Miss Payne. This is Deputy Sergeant Garrison with Henrico County Sheriff's Office. I work for Sheriff Alyssa Gregory, whom you might have voted for in the last election cycle if you bothered to vote at all. Well, Miss Payne, we've sent you 3 letters in the mail regarding jury duty over the last 6 months. You haven't responded to a single one, and wouldn't you know it, today you didn't show up at court. Now, I've talked to Judge Harris, and he is P.O.'d. Judge Harris issued a capias for your arrest. You got a bench warrant out for you. And wouldn't you know it, we got a SWAT team parked around the door. They got the battering ram on. The front door's coming down and the wall's coming with it. You're going to get triple-tay, spear-tackled, zip-tied, and dragged out in your underpants. Perp walked in front of the 6 o'clock news. But we're not unreasonable. Today and today only, we're going to give you a chance. One more chance. You can pay a fine or you can go to jail. What are you going to do today, Miss Payne? Neither, right? You're going to hang up the phone. You're going to hang it up. But, of course, many people don't, because that's some scary stuff, right? And they're going to name drop all this stuff. They're going to talk the big talk. These are people who've been like professionally involved with the legal system their entire lives, right? They know all about the arraignment and the general district court hearings and the circuit court. They can talk the talk to you, and they can be very convincing over the phone. But the MO is very similar to the IRS scam, even to the point of going and buy gift cards, going down to the Bitcoin ATM, all that stuff's going to be the same. All that stuff's going to be the same. If you missed jury duty, the only thing that's going to happen to you is there could be a capias for your arrest, a contempt of court warrant. And you would have to come in and explain to the judge why you missed court. That's it. Nobody's going to call you and shake you down for money over the phone, much less Bitcoin and gift cards. Everybody with me on that? Outstanding. This is rampant, and it's pretty successful. These guys are slick, and they've got all the time in the world to refine their scheme. Okay, lottery scam. If you didn't play the lottery, you didn't win. Thank you for the interactive portion of this class. Outstanding gold star. Do you need me to belabor this slide? I mean, we can talk about it more, but if you didn't play, you didn't win. If you didn't buy the magazines, you didn't win the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Publishers Clearinghouse is bankrupt. So even if you did buy the magazines, you didn't win the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Right? Everybody knows that company doesn't exist anymore. They've gone out of business. So you're not getting a big check, is what I'm saying. Nobody's coming to your house with a big check and balloons and flowers. It's not real. But what's the emotional lever that the crooks are pulling, of course? Greed. If you get greedy, you get stupid. Would you agree? I mean, that's just human nature. You show me somebody who thinks they're going to get rich quick, I'll show you a sucker. And that's just human nature. We're all the same. If I can get you feeling fearful or I can get you feeling greedy, I can start to wind you up. Okay, has anybody in the room gotten one of these calls, the grandma scams, the distress scams? I do these, two people in her personal social circle. When I do these presentations with our senior groups, like hands just go up. Hands just go up. It's so common. So the MO for this one, they've got a really elaborate script, and usually there's 3 or 4 perpetrators all working together on this one because it's so well orchestrated. And so the pitch is going to be usually something like this. The call's going to come in at any hour of the day. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's going to go like ring, 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 and our senior's going to pick up the phone. Hello? Grandma, And there's a pause. They'll wait. Jimmy? Yeah, Grandma, it's me, Jimmy. You know, you like hear them winking over the phone. They don't know who Jimmy is. They're just waiting for you to tell them who Jimmy is. Grandma was hitting the throat with the airbag. That's why I can't talk. It's really hard to talk. Here's my lawyer. Here's my lawyer. And the lawyer comes on the phone, right? And he goes, hello, this is Pierre, Jimmy's lawyer. Jimmy was on vacation in Paris. Jimmy ran over a busload of nuns after drinking too much wine. Half of the nuns were pregnant and now they are all dead. You know, Jimmy is in very big trouble. Here's the bondsman. And then they put the bondsman on, right? And here comes the bondsman, like, hey, this is Pete from Pete's Bail Bond Service, Paris, LLC. Yeah, so Jimmy is facing 16 counts of voluntary manslaughter. Jimmy is going to be remanded to custody unless he pays his bond by tomorrow afternoon at close of business. Now, the way the court system works in Paris is once he loses bond, he's got to stay in until trial. Well, the trial's not going to be set until August 14th, okay? So Jimmy's going to be in prison for a while unless you go ahead and pay the bond. Now, we're overseas, so the only way I can accept the bond payment for Jimmy is an international wire transfer, and I've got to have that by close of business today, okay? So I'm going to give you the routing number and the account number for our bonding service. You got to send that money right away. All right, and then they're going to put Jimmy back on the phone to like seal the deal, right, to close it. Grandma, I'm so ashamed I've ruined my life. Don't tell Mom and Dad you're the only one I can trust. Right? And it's, how effective is that? It is so effective. It is so effective. Now, for all of us sitting in the room, we're not going to fall for it, are we? Because we're well nourished. We're in a sterile environment. We're not feeling any fear or discomfort. We're not in any apprehension. We know that our loved ones are safe. What about if you didn't eat well or sleep well last night? What if your doctor changed your blood pressure medication and now you're literally not getting as much oxygen to your brain as you were 24 hours ago? What if you had a death in the family in the last week or two? Think you might be a little preoccupied? What if Jimmy really is on vacation somewhere and you haven't spoken to him in a while and you're worried? Now this hits you. How effective do you think that's going to be? Very, very, very effective. Losses run between $50,000 and $100,000 on these cases, typically. Who in the room has someone for whom they would do just about anything? Just about anything. I see some hands going up. If you didn't put your hand up, go make some friends. Just saying. You know, I mean, I'm kind of like antisocial, like just this side of misanthrope, being introverted, right? Like when I retire, I'm going to build a little cabin in the woods, you know, leave me alone, don't talk to me. Even I've got a wife and 2 kids, so there's hope for all of you. All right, there really is someone for everyone. Point being, most people have someone in their lives. And this is what's playing on that. If you have a loved one who overshares on social media, anecdotally, that may increase your risk. I've heard victims tell me, and I can't rule it out. I don't know whether it's true or not. I've heard victims tell me, you know, it really did sound like my grandson on the phone. Do you think they used AI to like copy his voice? And I'm usually like, nah, they probably didn't. They probably just made your brain short circuit and you probably just heard the voice of your loved one because you thought it was real. But I can't prove that. And so it really might be possible that these crooks are using generative, you know, LLMs and things like that. I can't prove it. I can't not prove it. So if you have a loved one who overshares, like is Instagram famous or something like that, that could increase your risk for that. Okay, reshippers. So this one is interesting. This is a fake job. These came out of the former USSR states. So like Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine was big prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And then they all stopped. We haven't seen one of these cases in years. So it's almost like the Russian government, the Russian mob was behind all these. The Russian government, sorry, for some reason I keep misspeaking. I don't know why that is. But yeah, it's a fake job opportunity, and they're going to say, hey, you know, you're going to be an executive assistant for some rich person who's too busy to pay his own bills or whatever, or you're going to be a package inspector, and we're going to send you stuff in the mail, and we're going to make sure it's not been damaged by our negligent shipping partners. So you're going to get these boxes, just open them up, take a picture of the contents, make sure that they're okay, tape them back up, and put a new shipping label on it. Send it on its merry way. What does that sound like? You getting stuff, receiving it, putting a new label on it, and sending it somewhere else. What is that? What? Oh, Miss, is it Silk? Slick, Van Slick. I'm so sorry. So Miss Van Slick hit it, nail on the head. 2 gold stars for you. What's in that box? Usually it's a smartphone or something else that was purchased with a stolen credit card. So they can't have it shipped right to their door, because even Joe Wood, who's got 2 thumbs that don't work very well on the phone, right? But even I could solve that case if you're getting stuff shipped right to your door. So they've got to kind of launder it up. You're not laundering money, but you're laundering stolen goods, the stuff that was bought with stolen credit cards. Or it could be simpler than that, and they could just be casting all these lines in the water so that people come to them and say, I would like a part-time job, please. And you say, hey, no problem. Just send me all of your W-4 information. Right, Ms. Walker? I need your name, date of birth, social security number. I need your mother's maiden name. I need where you live. I need your phone number. I need your email address, et cetera, right? I need your bank account information for the direct deposit. What does that sound like? Identity theft, right? Identity theft. So that's kind of the simpler version of the scheme, is I'm just pretending to give somebody a job as a means to get all of their personal information, including their financial information, under the guise that I'm going to pay them to do work. But obviously, you're never getting paid. Avoid any kind of shady, like, work from home that doesn't really make sense. Your boss is giving you weird instructions. You're like, I'm going to send you this check. Just deposit it and send me back some of the money. Well, why did you send me the check? Anyway, that kind of stuff. Okay, so romance scams, or sweetheart swindles, or relationship scams, whatever you want to call these are a really heavy hitter. This is one of like our major loss generators. Has anybody had the great misfortune of a loved one getting taken in by one of these scams? This is life altering. So the way that these work is, they're going to prey on those folks who are living alone without a partner, okay? Now, loneliness is one of those wounds that time doesn't really heal. Would you agree? Who's ever said, well, I was lonely yesterday, but today I feel much better? Does it work like that? Not really. And as we move through our lives, what happens? We lose people along the way, don't we? And that's really painful. And it's really hard to move on. And so for these folks, they're living alone without a partner, they're feeling these intense feelings of loneliness. Before you know it, you find yourself on farmersonly.com, right? Or Christian Mingle, or Tinder, or Grindr, or Plenty of Fish. I don't want to know. It's 2026. You go and live your best life. Don't tell me. The point I'm trying to make to you is, although there are plenty of fish in the sea, there are plenty of sharks too. You with me? Every single dating site is absolutely overrun with these fake profiles. Every single one. Anybody tried like dipping a toe in online dating or anything? You don't have to like speak up. I know sometimes it's a little embarrassing. If you have, you'll know what I'm talking about. They are just overrun with fakers and scammers, okay? So what they're gonna hit our poor victim up. They're gonna strike up this conversation with messenger apps, and they're gonna come on really strongly. They're gonna have like really schmoopy talk, like, oh, I love you, kissy, kissy, hug, hug. We call it love bombing. Anybody ever heard that phrase, getting love bombed? Now, to you or to me, that's gonna seem off-putting, right? I just started talking to you last week, and now you're like, you love me and stuff, and we're gonna be a little icked out about that. But if you're really lonely, and you're at your wit's end, that's kind of like water in the desert, isn't it? They're getting exactly what they came here to get. And it's not always as off-putting to that very lonely person. That's satisfying their emotional need. And so this is going to escalate pretty quickly, and there's going to be these intense romantic feelings. There may be an exchange of indecent photographs, and that sort of thing to like reinforce this relationship. This is going to go on for a period of months, and yes, it can go on for a period of years. Talking and texting and all day, every day, all day, every day. What is happening is, usually there's a team of people, half dozen or more, and they have created this character in a play. And they're all taking turns like, okay, Aaron, well, start your shift. You're Leon. Okay, I'm Leon for the next 6 hours. And then Aaron marks off, and now it's Ashley's turn. Okay, I'm Leon for the next 6 hours. And our poor victim doesn't have a clue that they're being like assaulted by committee. You know what I mean? They think it's all real. And there's a lot of interesting, like stereotypical human psychology that goes on. Like, anybody like to read trashy romance novels? I mean, but you don't be shy, put your hands up, it's okay. So like those kinds of characters, those big adventurous characters, like larger than life, we see that all the time in these scams. So if you're seeking masculine affection, oh, they're going to give you the romance. He's going to be a trauma surgeon living in Tel Aviv with Doctors Without Borders, and he's providing emergency pro bono aid to like Palestinian refugees who've been injured in conflict. And on the weekends he goes skiing, and he's got a Great Dane, and it's going to be like all this stuff. It's like and he does Krav Maga on the weekends. And he's got like an 8-pack. You know what I mean? And it's just like impossibly, like, who could compete with this guy, right? Who could compete with this guy? And there's going to be this element of adventure and romance, you know what I mean? And people fall for that hard because, again, these are lonely people. And you're like, holy cow, I never thought this storybook romance would happen to me, right? Seems a little too good to be true. Well, what if you're seeking feminine companionship? Do you think they do any of that? Come on, fellas. Do you think they do any of that? No, because they're fishing with dynamite and they know it. There are a lot of thirsty dudes out there. And so they just put like a South Korean movie star's headshot and like, picture of her without her shirt on, and they're like, I love you. And the dude's like, yeah, I love you too, baby. Here's my money. And it's like pretty much that easy for these guys. So anyway, sorry fellas, we're pretty easy marks is what I'm saying. The women, they have to work a little harder to get the same effect. But anyway, so this is like a drip. This is like bleeding you dry, death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. And what they're going to do is they're going to make really small requests up front, and then those requests get bigger over time. Anybody familiar with the psychological phenomenon that once you say yes to someone, it's really hard to say no? Ever had that experience? Like you're dealing with a pushy salesman, and it's like you say yes one time and now like 10 minutes have gone by and you're still talking to this loser. You're like, how did this happen to me? It gets easier and easier the more that we sort of like go along with what somebody says. We just keep going along with it. And that's this scam to a T. It's really hard once you go down that road to pull yourself back out. So 6 months, a year goes by. They're going to bleed our poor victims dry. And it's going to be like, my dog got ran over and now I got to take him to the vet, or my auntie's got a tumor that needs to get cut off, or my car broke down. I had my plane ticket to come be with you, my love, but wouldn't you know, my car broke down on the way to the airport and it was a transmission, and now I need 6,000 American dollars to get it fixed. Or I'm a full bird colonel in the Army and I'm stranded behind enemy lines and the Army can't fly me out because it would blow my deep cover, right? I'm super deep cover. So can you spot me a couple grand for an airplane ticket? I mean, it's anything you can imagine. And this on and on and on and on it's going to go. Our victims are just going to keep pumping money into this until they're just flat broke. Whether you got $5 or $5 million, you're going to lose it all. I'm telling you right now, you're going to lose it all to this scam. Once our victims are completely broke, then the scammers flip the script, and they're going to throw them a lifeline. And that lifeline is going to be in the form of the Nigerian prince scam. You familiar with that scheme? I'm a legitimate Nigerian prince, right? Okay, so here's the scheme for the lifeline for the victim who's now completely broke. The lifeline is going to be, my uncle's an oil man in Nigeria, and the legacy of British colonialism, the government's a little corrupt. They're going to get my uncle's money. You know what I'm talking about, Mr. Sorensen? You know what I'm talking about. They're going to get their mitts. They're going to get their corrupt mitts on my uncle's money. But he can't wire it out. He can't wire it out of the country. They're going to get it in transit. But if we had a squeaky clean American bank account, that's a different story. Now we can just park. I'm just going to park just for a little while, Darlene. I'm just going to put a little bit of money in your account just for a little while. I want you to send it to our business partner in Alberta. We've got a tar sands development in Alberta, Canada. We're going to invest in. We're all going to make this back 10 times over. Are you in? Yeah, I'm in. All right, let's go. So on Tuesday, $250,000 shows up in your bank account. Is it real money? What do you think? Yeah, it's real money. It came in under a swift wire transfer. The banker's probably filling out a suspicious activity report on you. But yeah, it's real money. Okay, so after you get done panicking and you're covered in flop sweat, you're going to text your lover. And you'll be like, what do I do with this money, my love? Kissy face emoji. And they're going to say, no harm done. I'm sorry to have dragged you through all this. Here's $5,000 for your pain and suffering. Send the rest to this routing number and this account number. That's our oil connect in Alberta. So you send the money off, and what have you just engaged in? Say it like you mean it. Transnational, organized crime, money laundering. The real deal federal felonies, right? The real deal. Where'd the money come from? Let's go back a couple slides. We'll review. Who said it?
I did. Wow, did you have a
So
coffee
I get a little geeked out on this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Where'd it come from?
Yes, Grandma.
Yes, it did. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I get into it, you know. It's like this is kind of my thing. All right. Yeah, it came from. Sorry. Yes, it came from the grandma scams. That's exactly where it came from. And now you're laundering it for the criminals because you don't know any better. And of course, it's not going to an Alberta oil development. Where's it going? It's going to victim number 2. And they're getting the same story. And they're going to send it to their Alberta oil development, which is going where? Victim number 3 and victim number 4. And on around the world we go, from bank to bank to bank, many of which are not going to be in the United States. Can I send a subpoena ducis tecum to a bank that's not in the United States? No, I cannot. Can I follow the flow of those funds? No, I cannot. Not internationally, not without doing a mutual legal assistance treaty request. Does that sound easy or does that sound difficult? Does that sound quick or does that sound slow? Yeah, a little bit slow. A little bit slow to get documents back on an MLAT, usually about a year at a minimum, because we have to send it to the consulate of the receiving country. They have to adopt the case, which they don't have to do. They have to adopt the case locally, have a hearing, get the documents, send it back to our embassy, and yeah, it's just like, as a practical matter, it's not going to happen. So yeah, the money's just gone with a capital G. Gone with a capital G. We had a victim here in the Richmond metro area a year and a half ago who sent close to $1 million, and she was ultimately convicted. The federal government reached out to her via what they call money mule letters. Everybody heard the phrase money mule? How about drug mule? You've heard the phrase drug mule. Same idea. You're moving the money on behalf of the criminal syndicate. And so they sent her multiple of these letters like, hey, knock it off. And she was so deep in the scam she couldn't see her way out. She kept doing it, and she was ultimately convicted federally. And she was like 78 years old, I think, something like that. Yeah, pretty twisted. These are like absolutely heartless and cruel scammers. How easy do you think it is to extricate yourself from this scam once you're in it? Almost impossible. Almost impossible. I've had people slam doors in my face. I've had people tell me to get off their lawns. Because think about this. Everybody heard of Bernie Madoff in this room, right? Everybody's heard the name Bernie. What did Bernie Madoff do? Yes, he ran a Ponzi scheme. The biggest Ponzi scheme ever. $16 billion with a B. I'll lower the tone of my voice. I know, I'm like right in front of you. $16 billion with a B. Why did Bernie Madoff go to prison? Because he stole from rich people, and that's against the law. You can't steal from rich people. Come on. So anyway, no. So Bernie Madoff, Ponzi scheme. People kept investing with Bernie Madoff after he was federally indicted. Did you know that wrinkle to the story? People kept sending him checks after he was under indictment. Why? Because I'm a sophisticated investor. I'm Mr. Moneybags. I'm a Wall Street guy. Nobody pulled the wool over my eyes. I've been doing business with Bernie Madoff for 20 years. Who are you to tell me Bernie's a crook? Bernie's not a crook. I'm doubling down. Human psychology, right? The vulnerabilities that we all carry around with us. Ego, right? Shame, fear of being had. So think about those feelings. How easy is it to admit to yourself that you've been had? That you've been taken. Somebody got the better of you. They pulled the wool over your eyes and you were a sucker. You never saw it coming. Easy? No. Super hard. Now, think about how easy it is to admit all of that and to admit to yourself that no one loves you and you're going to die alone. I don't say that to be funny. I mean, you chuckle. Okay, it's like really dark humor, right? But that's where they started, isn't it? That's where our victims started. Nobody loves me. I'm going to die alone. Now, they're broke. Flat broke. They've been talking to a fictitious persona for a year, and no one loves them and they're going to die alone. Can you blame them for preferring the fantasy to reality? You kind of can't blame them. If you'll indulge me, any fans of PBS in the room, like old school Carl Sagan nerds? I'm a nerd. I don't know if you've picked up on that, Mr. Tyler. Yeah, okay, guilty as charged. Yep, nerd, right? Geek, nerd alert, geek, standing in front of you. I love Cosmos. I love Carl Sagan. I thought he was just the coolest dude. So Carl Sagan, astrophysicist, science promoter, he was dying of cancer, and he wrote a book with his wife, Ann Druyan, called Demon Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark. It's like a love letter to the scientific method. Like, hey, wouldn't the world be better if we all use these clear, rational principles to, I mean, whether you buy it or not, you know, that's the book. But the foreword of the book, if you'll indulge me, I'll read it to you. I think it's so relevant. And he wrote, one of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. And that is 100% my experience with these romance scams. I can't help these people. I can't save them. They don't need a police detective. They need a therapist. And I don't say that to be funny, but they've got a lot of like coming to terms with reality that they have to do because the fantasy that they've been living in has got its hooks in them so deeply. It's really devastating. It's devastating. All right. I know that was a bit heavy, sorry. Sorry, but there's really there's no silver lining, there's no light at the end of the tunnel on those romance scams. They are devastating, devastating. Okay, couple more things I'll run by you. The Phantom Hacker is this interesting computer fraud scheme where they pretend that you've been hacked, right? They pretend, that's what the FBI called it the Phantom Hacker, because there's no hack, right? Whenever somebody tells me that they've been hacked, I'm like, hacking ain't real. You know, anybody in here been hacked? You know, now if you're a nation state, okay, now the game changes, right? If you're SolarWinds and you provide internet services to half the United States government, yeah, you got a big old bullseye on your back. Then we get into real life hacking. If you're Johnny and Jamie on the street, like who's going to devote the resources and the time and the attention to like overcoming the electronic security in your cell phone? You know how difficult that is? Like, we're the police, and it still takes us weeks and months to do that under search warrant situations. It's really hard. So, as a practical matter, you didn't get hacked. What you got was conned. And here's how it works. They're going to pretend to be tech support, or they're going to pretend to be the Federal Trade Commission, because they have a lot of criminal investigators, right? They're a civil agency. They're going to pretend to be like some super secret squirrely investigator you've never heard of, and they're going to say, hey, there's an insider attacking you right now. They're in your phone, they're in your computer, they're draining your bank accounts. I'm watching them doing it live on this screen right here. Can't tell your bank though, the bank employees are in on it. They're in on it, Tim. Don't call them, because they're just going to lie to you. Here's what you got to do. We got to create a whole new identity for you to safeguard your assets. So I've got a new account set up. What I want you to do, Jalen, I want you to go down to the Bitcoin ATM, and I want you to put 50,000 American dollars in that Bitcoin ATM to safeguard your assets, because the crooks can't get them there. Come on, right? But what's it playing on? Fear, of course. They're going to give you all this. Now, it's a bit cockamamie, and there's going to be like a whole lot of red herrings and squirrely stuff that they're going to tell these folks to do just to confuse them and bamboozle them. I'm not going to go into all that because it kind of is confusing and bamboozling. But if you want to learn more about it, the FBI has a really neat infographic on this on their website. So if if you're geeking out on this and you're like, man, Joe, you got me so pumped on this, I got to learn more. Then you can go to the FBI's website and just type in Phantom Hacker in their commonly encountered scams section of the website. So if you use a search engine near you, FBI, Phantom Hacker, they've got a really nice write-up on how this scheme works there. So I won't reinvent the wheel. But I obtained this one from a U.S. Attorney's Office in Maine. Okay, so what do we do for computer scams? I would tell you to avoid using search engine results if you're trying to find out a phone number. Okay? The reason I say that, who in here knows, I'll pick on Google, who in here knows why Google is a $1 trillion company? What do they sell?
Our data.
They do sell your data, but, okay, who in here has ever paid for your Gmail account? Nobody?
Storage.
Yeah, I get, okay, if you got workspace, if you got like multiple gigs on there, yeah, okay, they might charge you like $6 a month or something. But who, I mean, you don't pay for their services, right? So how do they make their money? They make their money on data. To whom? To whom are they selling your data? Which companies? Advertising. I'm sorry, advertising, yes. The advertisers, okay, they're a huge advertising. They're the second biggest advertising company in the world. What's the first biggest? What? Meta, Facebook and Instagram. Facebook and Instagram. Okay, so they're huge in advertising. Google controls like an enormous percentage of all advertising traffic on the World Wide Web. But they have this interesting feature, and again, I'm just picking on Google, but pretty much every other engine works the same way. They have search ads. So if I make things like joewoodsbirdhouses.com or whatever, I'm going to pay Google a few dollars and say, hey, anytime somebody in Central Virginia Googles birdhouses, I want my page to be the first on the list, right? That's that search ad. Well, here's how the criminals manipulate that. The criminals manipulate it by saying, anytime somebody Googles Amazon.com customer service, I want my telephone number to be at the top of the list. So you think you're dialing up Amazon or AT&T or Apple or Microsoft or any of these companies you might do business with, but really it's not their number. The first number you see is a search ad, and you're calling the suspects. You're calling these scammers up. You have to scroll down to see the real results, don't you? But if you take the first thing you see, you're just going to call these scammers. And so now you're off to the races. Oh my goodness, don't you know you're entitled to a refund? Here's how you go, and off we go, right? Off we go. Now, if you're having trouble with your computer, what's the old IT recommendation? Unplug it and plug it back in, okay? That's going to short circuit all those pop-ups and stuff that are going on. When was the first pop-up ad sent? Anybody know? 1993. That's not a new thing. They've been around as long as the internet itself. All right, if you should see these suspicious emails or pop-ups or text messages, never, 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 never follow links in them, and never, 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 never call telephone numbers that appear there. If it's like, hey, this is Bank of America. Did you use your debit card to make this random purchase in Albuquerque? You're like, well, no, I did not. Call the real Bank of America, call their actual, like delete that, and then go and walk into a branch. Like, let's go old school. Be like, hey, I think there might be a problem with my credit card. Can you help me out? The teller will be happy to help you with that. And that way you know that you're not off to the races on one of these hooks. Yes, sir?
Then how can you find the right government agency telephone number?
Yeah, go directly to their website. So any government agency in the United States, for the most part, is going to end in .gov. The United States government controls that entire domain space. So like the Federal Trade Commission is ftc.gov, right? The Senate, senate.gov, whitehouse.gov, right? That's how kind of the US government systems work. If you're not sure what their URL is, you can use the search engine to look up the URL, but then I would just navigate directly to that page. And like once you're on the .gov page, you know that the number you see on there is legitimate. Good question. And then for your frequently used websites, like your online banking and things like that, I would encourage you to just make bookmarks for all of them, and that way you're not like mistyping the URL accidentally, because the scammers can use look-alike domains to try to pilfer traffic that accidentally makes its way to them. So just use bookmarks is a good rule of thumb. Okay, we're almost done here. You guys have been great. How do they want to get paid? We've already talked about it. Scammers want cash, they want cryptocurrency, they want gift cards, they want wire transfers. If you give them any of those, it's really almost impossible for law enforcement to recover. Not totally impossible, but very close. Occasionally you'll see money orders, like that's kind of like the remittance scam, where you're sending money to loved ones overseas. And then oftentimes we can see with the more sophisticated schemes, we'll have multiple links in fake bank accounts and things like that. But the lion's share are cash, Bitcoin, and gift cards. That's about probably 75 or 80%. Here's what a cryptocurrency ATM looks like. If you've seen them around town, they're in your convenience stores, things like that. I tell people that I just call them larceny boxes, right? Please don't put your money in the larceny box. Has anybody in your life, in your personal or professional business, ever had to use a cryptocurrency ATM? Have you ever needed to use one? Don't start now. That would be my advice to you. You got a good thing going, don't mess it up. Okay? That's what they look like. Here's a green dot card. You might have seen those. They have a legitimate use. There's nothing illegitimate about the card, but it's easy for criminals to manipulate to their benefit because the money can be quickly exfiltrated. Now, we got a couple of slides on the James Bond stuff here at the end. I'm not going to belabor this. I hit the scams really hard because the banks are not going to give you your money back. If you go to a bank and you say, hey, I got scammed and I gave this guy in Taiwan like 10,000 of my dollars, the bank's going to be like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? I'm the bank. I'm in the business of moving your money around when you tell me to. You told me to move your money. I moved it. It's gone. What do you want from me? Okay, so scams will get you because nobody's coming to save you. However, your cardholder agreement that you sign when you get a credit card or a debit card with the banks are obligated to refund any fraudulent purchases, aren't they? Nod your heads like yes. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So I dare say most everyone in this room has probably had their credit card defrauded at some point. And other than being a big pain in the neck, you didn't lose any money, did you? So we're going to kind of skim through this. But I'll just tell you kind of how this stuff works. These are little gizmos. They're just a man-in-the-middle attack, if you've ever heard that. You might have seen these little red stickers on the pumps outside. That's not tamper-resistant, but it's supposed to be tamper-evident. So if the criminals get a master key and they open up the service panel, the idea is it's going to break the little sticker, right? But now we're relying on the clerk to be diligent enough to frequently replace the sticker. Your mileage may vary as far as that goes. Once you open the machine up, this is what it's going to look like. These are strictly old school technology. Anybody seen these old gray data ribbons from your Commodore 64 or your Apple Color computer? I mean, this is some 1980s tech in there. So it's really easy to just hook an alligator clip on there, and you can download any data that moves through. It's super, super basic. It seems really high tech. It's not that difficult. These days, they're getting more enterprising, and they've started skimming the point-of-sale terminals inside the store because there's too much surveillance on the pump. There's way too much surveillance on ATMs. They've gotten to be a much harder target. Still happens, but less frequently. And so they started skimming these payment pads. And it's just a man-in-the-middle attack. You put your card in, it just reads the data off the card. Here's a case that I worked a year and a half ago. This was the gentleman's dining room. As you can see, he's got his baby cradle there. Aw, cute kids, and skimmers right there on the table with his card read encoding device and his laptops. And there was off screen, there was a bureau drawer. I opened the drawer and it was just like credit cards just came spelling out the top. Pretty interesting. He and his accomplice got 5 years in the penitentiary. So here are some stats for you in case you're curious. Under 20, yeah, you're broke, but you're not getting scammed much. So, you take the good with the bad. However, as you move through life and you get closer to retirement, you get a big old bullseye on your back. By far and away, the #1 demographic for complaints to law enforcement of scams is folks 60 or older. The complaints just go up every year, and in 2024, $16.5 billion in losses. It's just astonishing the amount of money. Here's what we're up against in closing. This is KK Park in Myanmar or Burma. Anybody ever heard of KK Park, Scam City? There's, what is it, The Beekeeper? Is that the movie that came out about this not too long ago? Anyway, some folks have heard of it. You may be familiar with the country of Burma, right? The military dictatorship staged a coup like 30, 40 years ago, and then they've been oppressing the civilians ever since. They renamed the country Myanmar, and the population has risen in revolt against the oppressive military dictatorship, and now there's a shooting civil war afoot in Burma, and has been for 3-4 years. So pretty much the only thing the government does there is shoot at rebels. They don't really do a whole lot of peacekeeping and law and order kind of stuff. So the country is effectively without a useful rule of law. It's very much an anarchic war zone situation. Into this is the river between Thailand and Myanmar here. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, Thongin, I think, but forgive me. Anyway, into this giant power vacuum of sort of an anarchic state, the Chinese organized crime syndicates were more than happy to just go strolling on in. And so they invested literally hundreds of millions of dollars building these basically towns in Myanmar where they're insulated from law enforcement because they can just bribe local officials. And if you're familiar with the apartment complex at 9 Mile and Laburnum, it's had different names throughout the years, Seven Gables, Jared, whatever you want to call it. Those are 2-story apartment buildings there, aren't they? And they're quite large. What you're looking at here with the red roofs are 5-story apartment buildings, and there could be as many as 30,000 people in this. It's a big complex. That's just a small part of it. There could be as many as 30,000 people living in a condition of human bondage as of today, modern day slavery. And what happens is these organized crime groups post fake job advertisements online for people who are looking for job opportunities in Southeast Asia. And they say, hey, if you speak French or Dutch or German or English, that's the only skill you need. Come on down and work in our call center. We're going to pay you. It's a 9-to-5 job. You'll be home every night on the weekends. People get off the plane, and there's no job waiting for them when they get off. It's the triads. It's the Chinese organized crime syndicates. They kidnap them, seize their passports. They throw them in these torture dungeons, and they force them at gunpoint to engage in scams. I mean, it sounds impossible to believe, but it's true. So the next time you get a scam text or a scam email or a scam call, there is a non-zero chance, in fact, it's a pretty good chance, that the person who sent it was being beaten into submission to send it on behalf of these crime syndicates. It's mind-boggling, but that's what we're up against. What you can do is stage the world's largest hostage rescue situation in the middle of an active war zone. So it's like, how do you solve this problem? I don't know. If you have an idea, throw it out there, because.
But I think they were raided.
Well, yeah, so
Recently.
But what happened is, and I mean, all right, there is an ocean of dirty money flowing through this. I mean, billions with a B. And so every local official is getting bought off. It's like the Mexican cartels, right? You want lead or do you want gold? Take your pick. And so most of these people choose gold, and they turn a blind eye to it. So there have been some very limited raids by the authorities to release people. It's almost always specific prisoners who have been rescued, which tells you all you need to know about why those individuals, usually it's people who are connected politically or have money to pay ransoms, is pretty much what it comes down to. And if you don't have connections or you can't pay a ransom, you're stuck, you're not getting out. I mean, it's horrifying. It's just horrifying. So this is where it's coming from. As I said, like every continent, every country, all over the world, these are where we're seeing them based on our investigations, just anywhere you can think of. Anywhere you can think of. All right, who are my victims? Everybody. I had to update my presentation a little while ago to put financial advisor up at the top. Sharp guy, but now that he's 90, he probably shouldn't be making big financial investments. He probably should pass that off to somebody else, just saying. I had an obstetric surgeon, really, really smart guy, brilliant guy, even smarter than me, if you can believe it. And what happened, he suffered a stroke and had some palsy in one arm. He joked to me that the hospital had no use for a one-arm surgeon. He was cognitively 100%. He just couldn't use his left arm. He got taken in for like 50 grand. So the point I'm trying to make is this is not a function of sophistication or education or intelligence. We're all human, and we're all vulnerable. Okay, if you can name it, our victims have done it. Depleted all their savings, stolen money to keep feeding these scams, borrowed it, lied to their friends and family, filed for bankruptcy, and yes, even killed themselves. Just so you can see it again, red flag warnings, gift cards, cash, cryptocurrency, unexpected distress, remote access to your computer or other electronic devices, law enforcement shaking you down over the phone, the sense of urgency, your lover that you've never met who's going to fly in to be with you any day now, but their car broke down on the way to the airport. Too good to be true investment opportunities like those crypto cases. Oh, you're going to make $1 zillion. Put in $5 grand. I'm going to turn it into 50,000. It's not real. And then insider threats or hackers. This was not a how-to class. I do not want to see any of you as victims, but I definitely don't want to see any of you as suspects. Okay, this was an awareness, not a step-by-step guide. And we doze, but we don't close. Who has questions? I know I'm a lot, and I know this was a lot. Who has questions for me? You've been wonderful. Who has questions?